but on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we do take calls. You're welcome to join the program at 508 928 5255. 508 928 5255. I just had on journalist Bobby Powell, who was at the events of January the 6th of 2001 and has video of it that he's showing various people in Congress, and they're not interested. But it really is quite sensational, and he's got a lot of guts. He was like right there. He was he was at like pepper spray and everything. I mean, he really was like a firsthand witness. So
How
check
come
that
he's
out.
not in jail?
He didn't have to go to jail. I think his main calling card was that he had all of this video that, well, it wasn't favorable to the government's position. And it's kind of like the same strategy, I suppose, that Whitaker Chambers used when he had his microfilm and evidence to indicate that the people that he was handling were communists. It kind of saved his life, because it was in various hands, and whoever wanted to take him out knew that if they did, that information would be released automatically. So I think that that's part of the dynamic with Bobby Powell.
Good.
Um, and you can check it out on my site. He's been they try to bribe him to stop showing these videos, and his life's been threatened. And he's just an interesting guy. I mean, I really admire what he's doing. Which brings me to why I'm calling this show the Warren G. Harding factor. Right now, at the Supreme Court, they're deliberating on whether or not to deny President Trump access to the ballot. And that's an interesting discussion. It's never been done before. And my point in terms of mentioning this is that there are agitators outside the Supreme Court who might start to go real nasty if things don't go in their way.
And it looks like that they're not going to go their way.
Is that right? Okay.
Well, the latest thing I've seen, uh, there was some audio from Gorsuch uh, really giving a very hard time to the attorney for Colorado, who ironically was a clerk for Gorsuch.
Mm.
He had no patience, and the guy was pretty lame, to be honest. But the story is that even Ketanji Jackson and some of the liberal women are going to go in favor of Trump because it's just too ridiculous.
Well, yes, and also Thomas brought up the fact that this, there is never been done that a major party candidate was removed from a ballot. The point I'm making though is that if it doesn't go their way, we might have situations like Antifa starting to do what they did throughout the Trump administration, which is loot the city, burn, start to firebomb cars and throw acid in the faces of old ladies and just doing what they do. And there's no one there to counter them. Whereas during the Trump period, there was the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. That's what they were there for. That's what they got into, confronting these people who were genuine seditionists who were attacking Trump supporters at various events, people who came out to support Trump. They have been taken off the field since January the 6th, and there's really no one that's going to be able to stop them. And I think that it's also possibly, God willing not, but it could possibly be a little bit of a warm-up for the election. And if Trump wins, it's going to go national. You're going to have cities on fire. You're going to have major revolution. You're going to have, businesses looted, neighborhoods burned, people being shot. And I bring the correlation up with regard to Warren G. Harding because President Harding faced a situation that was very similar about a year into his presidency. This was at a time when, after the Palmer raids, they had gotten rid of the real communist agitators. They put them on a boat, the ones who were not here legally, and
Right.
sent them out, including Emma Goldman and some others. And right, and she actually
They
later
did a
on,
movie about her. Yeah, that's
oh yeah,
great.
but she, what they don't talk about is that after the fact, she had a great deal of remorse, and she said, I was wrong about this. I was wrong to sell out my country, and I wish I hadn't done it. They don't talk about that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the point is that they were planning a direct action on a certain date in 1922, I think it was,
Yeah.
where the communist led unions and other communist agitators were planning on having a national rebellion in all the major cities. They were going to shut down the railroads, they were going to shut down the highways, they were going to shut down the trucks, they were going to shut everything down. And they meant business. They were really planning on a major disturbance that they hoped would bring about a communist revolution. And Harding got wind of it in advance, and they were hoping that he would respond by calling out the army and the National Guard and by declaring martial law, just like they hoped Trump would have done that during COVID, which he didn't. And they figured that once that happens, then it's a situation like Kerensky in Russia, right? Where that once they fall into that trap, then they could really start to agitate and take over, because then you have an open war. Well, Harding didn't fall for it. What Harding did, both directly and through his local agents, his local governors, and on all sides of the political spectrum, was he said, "Look, we're not going to go national with this. This is what's going to happen. We want this to be handled locally. We'll help in various ways, but it's going to have to be handled, and it has to be nipped in the bud, so to speak, as a local police matter, as a local issue of sheriffs handling it and diffusing it. And the way to do it is through negotiation. You have to give the unions a couple of concessions here, give them to a degree. Don't try to make it into a real fight, but try to see if you can and do it publicly, like we're going, make it into like turn the public relations aspect of it in our favor by pulling out the rug from their agitation, at least as far as the unions was concerned.
Right.
And that's exactly how it happened. What they did was that they declared that he contacted big corporations, got them to cooperate, do this and do that, give these concessions and do it publicly. You should do it anyway. You're screwing your workers. And, it will pull the rug out from under this political agenda, because they were using the unions politically. It had nothing to do with actual benefits. And it worked. It worked very well. There was nothing happened. He completely diffused the situation in advance, and there was no action. Now, Harding has never gotten credit for this because nothing happened. It sort of
Well,
slipped
that's
under.
exactly right. That they're still mad at him because he thwarted a
Oh
communist
yeah.
revolution.
Well, that's right. And they waited, and they waited. They waited for him, the same way what they did to Nixon. I mean, they discovered corruption in his government, and they used it to tarnish his reputation and possibly kill him. But that's another question.
Well,
Um,
Teapot Dome. Well, the little sidelight on that for LA people, I went to what's called University High School, West LA. I noted when I first started there in the 10th grade that there was wrought iron work around one of the doors that had H, letter H. And I found out that it was called Harding High School
huh.
before they changed the name when UCLA uh, came on the scene. And there, yes, his name was tarnished, which was really too bad because as minimal as the Teapot Dome scandal was compared to all the other crap that's gone on, he
Yeah.
had nothing to do with it, and it
Nothing
was
at all.
a corrupt official within Albert Fall, I think his
Albert
name was,
Fall. Yes. Hmm.
who was the fall guy, so to speak. But he and a guy named Edward Doheny, who the name is well known in LA as a big oil guy and so on. But
Yeah,
yeah, they could not allow Harding to be remembered for something good. And that's why they went after Nixon. Same thing.
exactly. And
They
Harding,
up
like
there,
Nixon, was extremely popular in his day. I mean,
yeah,
he won a landslide election. He was revered as a president, as the representing the regular guy. I mean, he was sort of
yeah,
the middle class. I mean, his slogan, "Return to Normalcy," was getting rid of Wilson's internationalism and socialism and authoritarianism and war and intervention. He undid a lot of that, which is why they hated him also.
well, that's why they hate him. And this is why, if you really want to get a taste of how screwed up academia is on the history side, look at the ranking of the US presidents. It's a
Oh yeah,
joke.
it's
It's
completely
a,
a
I mean,
political.
Harding is rated low. And the one that I always love, of course, fine. Lincoln is generally rated number one. But
Right.
the point is that Buchanan and Pierce are rated toward the bottom. And the reason Buchanan and Pierce are rated so poorly is they didn't prevent a civil war. But I guess the guy that waged the Civil War is number one. And if you want to see a liberal's head explode, just start that discussion. So, yeah,
Oh, it's a great one.
Harding is maligned, and it's great that you remembered that. I mean, that's
Yeah. Well,
it's really
I'm only equating it to what's going on now is because it's the same sort of situation. And I hope that President Trump can get this message because if he wins, he doesn't want to fall into this trap of, proving that they're right, that he's an authoritarian and he's a dictator, which will basically play into their hand, and then they'll have their revolution. He has to diffuse it by working with people locally, both liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans. That's what Harding did. He wasn't a partisan. It was like, do we want to have a bloody revolution or not? Let's see if we can find an accommodation here and play, expose their hand and do it without, he didn't do it. A lot of politicians like to do a lot of grandstanding, and they're like, oh, he didn't play that kind of game. I
behind
mean, he
the
was
scenes.
like, yeah, I mean, he actually was concerned with governing and with getting something properly done. So I
Well, one
hope
thing
that we can
going
take
for
that
him,
lesson. Yeah,
I would say one thing going for him was the communists were never that popular. Um,
right. Oh, they were
so
never popular, but they had influence because of their control over certain unions,
yeah,
and they had insiders as which eventually did come out during the FDR administration, and because of people like Whittaker Chambers, who blew the whistle on how many of them were on the inside and how powerful they were. So it's the same elite that's against Trump today. I'm not saying that they're, quote, capital C communists. I would say they're small c communists,
yeah,
but they are, they have an agenda that's very similar. This kind of like diminution of American independence and internationalism and a weakening of the American spirit and the American morals and kind of a turning human beings into human resources and basically making the country eventually lie supine to their power. And Trump stands in the way of that, just like Harding did. Trump
yeah. I
threatens
think
that.
maybe the worm is starting to turn because Stephen Miller,
Hmm.
who you recall from the Trump
Yeah.
administration,
Mhm.
has started a legal organization
Indeed.
that will give free legal aid to anyone who feels they've been discriminated against under diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes,
And the
him, him
lawsuits
and
are starting to occur.
him and Christopher Rufo,
Yeah,
who exposed Claudine Gay and who's incredible. He's been on this subject. Couple of good people. James Lindsay. I don't know if you know what he did. He did this hoax on academia where he and a few other people over a period of a year, they wrote these articles that were completely bogus and submitted them because they put in all these buzzwords for the left. and they ended up getting them published in all of these left-wing and peer-reviewed magazines and periodicals, and they were being quoted by these diversity people, and he even republished a big part of Mein Kampf in one of these, and they didn't even look at it.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it's hilarious. I mean, they got completely flat-footed by his, by what he did. I mean, it's a great story, and he's out there. I'm trying to get him on the show, but so you have some good people out there who are, blowing the whistle on this. And look, I mean, if President Trump, if they don't revert to the JFK solution, God forbid, he's on his way. I don't, if they keep him up, doesn't matter if they keep him up a ballot. People are going to vote for it. They'll write him in. I mean,
well, one other aspect of the worm turning is that Elon Musk is really now going after Disney, who's at the forefront of DEI. They're not the only one, but they seem to be the most vocal. He obtained some documents describing all the hoops that in production that they have to go through to fulfill these DEI requirements. He's also financing a lawsuit of Gina Carano, who was fired from one of the Star Wars productions. And there's rumors that he even wants to buy Disney. So I think the DEI thing is on its way out. The other thing that's happening kind of related to that, Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, apparently Anheuser-Busch is spending $14 million on ads for Bud Light. It's not going to matter. I mean, they don't seem to understand basic marketing. The choice of a beer, fine, okay? You could switch to another beer. And if you end up that you like Moderna, wherever you switch to, I'm sorry, Modelo, then that's it. They're not going to get you back. It doesn't matter.
They're not going to get them back. Plus, Bud Light was never very good anyways. It's lousy beer. It's like piss water.
So it's and very tellingly, they never apologized. And it could have been even a half-assed apology. Well, maybe that didn't appeal to everybody, or some, really mealy-mouthed thing. They didn't even do that. The CEO still has his job. Some ex-CIA guy who, how the hell did that guy get a job with a beer company? Who knows? Okay, but $14 million down the drain.
Yeah.
I suspect that it might be some backlash against some of the players, although I think a few of them aren't active NFL players anymore anyway. But some people might be influenced, but come on.
No, I mean, it's they've really totally shot themselves in the foot. Now, I think some people are upset about, and I don't know what's going to happen with a federal judge stating that President Trump won't have immunity in the trial that's coming up with regard to I think it's his documents, and whether or not he was in any way impeding the election, which he was not. But I actually think that that's going to work out in a good way, because if he doesn't have immunity and it does go to trial, I hope that he brings in witnesses, that he does kind of a discovery portion, and we maybe get a little bit more information about what did happen during that election, and how it was stolen finally, and that this whole idea that he was impeding. He is the elected president of the United States. That's his responsibility to try to ensure that elections are clean and that are done right. I mean, doesn't matter if it's his own election. That's a basic, and that's what he did. He stood up for the election integrity and for the American people. And I think that this can be an opportunity to show that to the American people by bringing people out who do know what happened.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it was strategic error on the other side.
Yeah.
If you're going to have litigation, Well, there's going to be discovery, and maybe this isn't what you want to have exposed.
That's right. And I don't think that the whole thing is going to happen anytime soon anyway, apparently. It's being kicked down the road because you can't, I mean, Giuliani brought this point up that you can't have somebody in the American system. I mean, maybe technically it's legal, but it's runs against American system of due process. It runs against American traditions. That if someone is being charged with a crime, I mean, I don't care if it's like Giuliani said, if it's a mobster, involved with being charged with a crime, the system is such that you do one at a time. You don't load up, 100 charges and every little thing from paying off a hooker to, you don't just, fill the docket with all these things and stagger them out. That's not due process. You let one take place and then you go to the next one and then you go to the next one. And so I think that, I mean, Giuliani notes that they've completely shot themselves in the foot by throwing everything up on the wall like this and trying to hit them with every single thing they can come up with. And now there's even rumors, especially now that Trump is winning the Nevada primary and he's
Well,
moving forward.
Yeah, we have to get into that for a minute.
Well, I mean, but there's rumors now that Jack Smith wants to again raid Trump's house again. They think, oh, there might have been a corner of a room that they didn't look at. I mean, Tucker Carlson was right when he noted that Trump won the election the day they went through his wife's underwear drawer. That was, it's like the American people were like shaking their heads. I even recall some Trump haters that I know personally were shaking their heads at that. It was like, really? It's so I think that even then, if they do that again, it's going to really further just nail this thing for Trump.
I mean, it's almost like they're purposely doing the wrong thing, or as we said earlier on this show in the past few weeks, they just have wearing out their playbook. They got nothing else they can do, and they don't have any talent. Why in the world did they get someone like Jack Smith, who he lives in the Netherlands, I think.
Right.
So
he's not even in this country.
They thought he was, just hellbound kind of guy that's going to go after Trump, but apparently that's
well.
not.
The fact they would even pick him. I mean, Giuliani. I listen to him as well often. He's great, but he said, "Look, when you get a special prosecutor, you get somebody who has some gravitas, like Lawrence Walsh, who was like with the Iran Contra, or Kenneth Starr, who was a respected legal scholar. He was the president of Pepperdine University, published lawyer. You get like, even Bob Mueller. I mean, as awful as he is, at least he had some credentials. This guy's just a thug. I mean, they bring him out off the street. I mean, he's just like and that's exactly what he was meant to do. And really the blame for that lies with Merrick Garland. I mean, he's been an absolute disaster, the fact that he would do this.
Yeah. Well, Smith reminded me of, I'm sure you go into any major city and in this, some sleazy neighborhood, there'll be a storefront lawyer who handles immigration and bankruptcy and divorce, whatever.
Yeah. I know, he's a hooligan, basically.
Yeah.
And he looks the part too. He looks like a little punk, just awful. So and I don't think it's working for them.
No. Now, in terms of the Nevada thing,
yeah,
Donald Trump Jr., I think, reposted an article on so-called Red State, which people are calling a conservative website.
Okay.
Explaining how Nikki Haley was going to win the Nevada primary. And of course, what happened, as your viewers all know, is she lost by 30% to none of the above.
It's one of the most humiliating elections for somebody in history.
Election history in the U.S.
And I think that in Nevada, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the state legislature, they're all for Trump, openly so. And I think they all were saying that this is what they were going to do. So.
Well, the spin that her campaign put on it.
Yeah.
So now tell me if you heard this before. It was Trump's fault.
Oh yeah, sure. She's like, Trump had it fixed, she said.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
they're just going to the same stupid playbook. I mean, I occasionally watch clips. I have to from the night shows because my wife watches them, so I watch them. And she had one with Bernie Sanders, right? Who's
uh,
who's pushing a new book, and she remarked. She says, "Gee, well, he's wearing such nice shoes. Yeah, they probably cost $5,000. I mean, he's like, in this kind of suit, and he's got his wife has this money coming in, really corrupt."
yeah.
And of course, they brought up the election, and you just launched into the same old BS. I mean, I don't think it's going to work. Trump is a dictator, and we're going to have the country will come to an end. There'll be no more democracy. He goes, democracy this, democracy that. I mean, it's really not only is it a load of BS, but I don't think that people are buying that at this point. I
Well,
mean,
when Sanders speaks, especially now, and maybe you're too young to remember this, but it's a lot like seeing Norman Thomas
hmm,
toward the end of his life, spouting these old, ancient, socialistic
yeah.
crap. Uh,
I know, and it's like you kind of glaze over. It's just all these platitudes. Plus, he
yeah,
stuck the knife in the back of Israel.
yeah.
Not to mention, we're going to cut off aid because I don't like Netanyahu. Since when is it okay to like meddle in the political businesses of any foreign country? I mean, fine, they don't like Netanyahu. I don't like him either. But the point is, that's Israel's business. They elected him, and that's their prime minister. You're going to stab them in the back. I mean, anyway, the it's just this whole diatribe about that Trump is a dictator. I don't think anyone's buying it. It's obviously Trump. I mean, I could get it maybe before he started serving his first term because he was not well known in terms of what he would be like. He's a businessman. He really didn't have any track record. So yeah, maybe you could say I don't know how he'll be. But now that he's served a term where they can't cite a single example of anything like that, I mean, it's just obviously garbage. I mean, and they're going to do their entire campaign on that. It's they've got nothing positive to say. They've got no, and he finally got around to talking about Biden, in which he was very weak. He didn't really like him, and you could tell that he's like, oh, they're going to do more next time, and we're going to have better labor relations. It's just a lot of vague crap. I mean, they can't say anything specific. So I think that's if that's all they have. I mean, it's not going well.
So, what do you think the strategy is going to be? Is Biden actually going to be pulled off?
Put Trump in prison is what the strategy is going to
Well,
be.
I mean, in terms of who they're going to run, are they actually going to run Biden under the thought that, okay, we'll just do this kind of Woodrow Wilson situation where someone's behind the scenes doing whatever? Uh, or are they going to replace him with some other warm body?
I think that he's it's so bad. I mean that he's just collapsed in the polls, and he's got nothing. I mean, Saturday Night Live has never even done a skit with Biden. I mean, it's like because it's so bad. It's he's just he's obviously dealing with some serious mental problems. Let's be honest. I mean, he cannot speak. He's got no energy. They hop him up on amphetamines, I think, or something, and they send him out there. It's not really working. And so yeah, they might have to replace him. And of course, Kamala Harris is even worse. I mean, she's actually less popular than anybody. She's horrible. So I mean, I don't know. Everyone says it'll be Gavin Newsom. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, he seems to me to be somewhat of a dimwit. I mean, I don't, I
Now,
don't know.
he's
What
a
do you
poor
think?
speaker. Um,
I mean, I've never seen a better liar than him. I mean, I saw him on with Bill Maher, and he just talks this yarn about, and he says absolutely nothing, but he rolls off his tongue like a Diablo, la, 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 it's like, and he kind of leaves your head spinning, and it says, sounds good. I have no idea what the hell he said, but it's
well,
like, he just,
there was a guy on Mars show, and I'm sorry, I forget his name.
yeah,
who started pressing Maher about, well, wait a minute, why do you support Newsom? And he made Maher look
Oh,
really
you're
bad.
talking about Bet David. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh yeah. And Mar has been. I mean, look, he's very good in many ways, but when he was talking to that guy, he's a black rapper. I forget his name. He calls himself the Killer Mike.
Yeah, Killer Mike.
Killer Mike. Good man, good musician, by the way, not bad. He was trying to get him to endorse Biden, and Killer Mike was not buying it. He
Yeah.
wasn't going along with it. And then Maher launches into this. Well, don't you? I mean, how could you support Trump? And then and then so he said, well, why do you support Biden, and why are you so anti-Trump? And Maher launched into this ridiculous, inane business about, he said this and he said that, and it's like they pluck some stupid comment Trump made in 5 years ago, and they make it's so stupid. I mean, those things have nothing to do with policy. You want to take a hard look at anything stupid that Biden said? I mean, holy crap! I mean, sure, he makes these off the wall statements. So what? Nothing to do with his administration, nothing to do with foreign policy, nothing to do with the border. He makes these off the cuff statements, and that's why he shouldn't be elected. I mean, I expected more from Bill Maher.
Well, Bill Maher, I always thought was a lightweight. Somehow
He actually, unfortunately, because I thought more of him, but I can see now that he is a lightweight.
No, he was. I certainly didn't watch him very much because I didn't like him, but it was pretty obvious what was going on. They'd send in these completely unqualified types to take him on, and it didn't work. But
No,
as
I've been watching Bill Maher for years, and I actually find him to sometimes be very perceptive, which is why it's so disappointing to me to hear that. I mean, it's like he becomes just like every other Trump hater. The minute you ask them and you say, "Well, what about it?" he starts babbling like a a bowl of like an idiot. They can't make sense. It's like it just spews.
I think some of his reputation was based on he's had this TV show forever.
Yeah.
And on a non-related matter, and probably all your viewers would disagree with me, but Roger Ebert, I always thought was a total hack for kind of the same reason that he was omnipresent. So you would just hear this barrage.
You get used to him, yeah.
But when you started looking into it, he didn't really know anything. A lot of what he said, he was flat out lying. He would always say things like, I watch 500 movies a year, which is impossible. And he would keep maintaining this. And then a very good friend of mine, Bud McFarlane, who's got a big Catholic website called Catholic City, we came to this independently. And we said, okay, let's talk about Roger Ebert, all right? If a movie has black people in it, he'll like it. Doesn't matter, good, bad, whatever. It's got black people, he likes the movie, all right? And in many cases, we would predict this movie doesn't have any black people, he won't like it. So the point was he had a reputation because he was always out there. But when you looked at his work, I estimated that at least 1/3 of the time he even got the plot of the movie wrong. I wrote a few articles about that, but it was like piling on, and the guy was sick and he died, and it didn't seem appropriate. But it's sort of the analogy that this guy's always there, okay? And if you look at a lot of TV, that was sort of it. Barbara Walters was on TV since the 1850s, right?
Oh yeah, she was always horrible.
There. But then, if you looked into these individual interviews and these deep, penetrating questions, like she asked Nixon, Mr. President, do you realize that many people feel that you're a stuffy individual? Oh man, that's brilliant. So,
I know. With her, it was always personal attacks, and she was horrible. But I mean, one of those guys that I actually liked, even though he was not well informed, he never read a book, was Larry King. And the reason I liked Larry King was because he, even if it was completely out of ignorance and inanity, he would get people to say things that they would not otherwise say because they kind of
That's
like
true.
he would draw them in. I mean, he would make people feel comfortable rather than going after them with both fists or was quoting facts out of a book. He almost would disarm people because of his stupidity or his lack of
Well,
sophistication, which in
you're
his case was quite real. It wasn't an act. He
all
never
right.
read the.
You,
You
you
could tell that he
remember
had. Yeah.
you remember the Jerry Seinfeld interview?
Well, Jerry Seinfeld took him on with both. He's like, because he was way off base. But he didn't, he actually didn't read anything. He just would go in there and he'd start to, kind of fake it. But the point is that in between the lines, people would open up and you
Well,
would get
he was
certain,
always softball. He was this affable guy.
right.
He really was not that smart. I think no one thought he
That's
was.
right. Well, that was, and it wasn't an act in his case. It was
No, he
real.
really was dumb.
He
Yeah.
was dumb and he was just kind of a bump on a log, but in a way it provided a service because, as I said, I mean, he didn't. It wasn't like a guy like a William F. Buckley,
Yeah.
or even like a Noam Chomsky or somebody, go in with it. He would just, but yet people would open up. Another guy that's very good at that is Howard Stern, even though he's gone on the dark side.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, he would get people to say very personal things. You felt like you were like a voyeur. You're like, and it's like you're watching, what's going on, inside the privacy of someone's house there. And he would get people to really say stuff that they would probably not even tell their own wife.
Yeah.
Because he would disarm people. He would make you forget where you were. You'd forget who you were talking to. You'd suddenly, oh, you're sitting in the parlor of a living room, and you just, he would, get people to say stuff we were curious to hear. I thought he did a good job on that with Paul McCartney, actually. Because I mean, the Beatles were always very guarded about their reputation. They would never say anything that wasn't perfectly scripted. Very very on. Whereas he got him to open up a bit. I thought it was quite good. So, those are interview kind of styles. But anyhow, I just to go back. I mean, I am, I think that maybe they'll put up Gavin Newsom. I don't know, but what they're doing isn't working, and it's not getting any better. Maybe they thought they'd get somewhere by bombing an aspirin factory in Syria. I don't know. Even though they alerted the Iranians in advance to evacuate, apparently.
Yeah,
And
that was very polite.
yeah, but whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They got to do something because they're losing right now.
Yeah, I don't know that they really have the smarts or the as I said, the playbook. I mean, this Nevada thing was supposed to be a big breakthrough for Nikki Haley, and Mark Elias was mentioned as having some big strategy that was going to work for her. Now, never mind the fact that she's deliberately working with these Democrat operatives.
She's working with Mark Elias?
Indirectly.
I mean, he was the mastermind behind just about everything. Him and Weisberg. I mean, he was the mastermind behind the conspiracy theory that Putin colluded with Trump to steal the 2016 election, the perfect phone call impeachment, the probably J6. He was probably behind that. He's got his hand in the election steal. I follow him on Twitter and I comment to him. He's bragging. He'll tell you what he's doing. He's bragging that there was a local state court decision that is now going to allow the state to continue to count ballots 2 weeks after the election, absentee ballots. But what he didn't count on was the fact that he revealed that this is going on. I mean, my response to him was, so you're saying that they're still counting ballots 2 weeks after? Who's doing the counting? Where did these ballots come from 2 weeks after? It's like, what? Hello, this is, I mean, so he reveals stuff because I mean, in a way, he's brilliant, but he's also in some kind of a bubble to think this is some great achievement. It's like, yeah, this is what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure that is going to work out for him.
Yeah.
And the whole Nikki Haley thing, anyway, when is she going to quit?
Well, I can't imagine her going beyond South Carolina. I mean, her home state, which Trump is going to clean her clock there. I don't think she's popular there. I don't, I just don't see it. I mean, I don't know, unless they pull something off that like they did in Arizona with Kerry Lake. I don't know, all the machines will break down that day in certain districts. And suddenly you'll find out that they fitted the ballot size a little differently so that it would clog the machines. And we find out that the person who printed the ballots was paid by some hack and, highly partisan. They'll pull some crap like that. Barring that, then, she's probably going down.
The only way I could figure out how she was even promoted was that somebody figured out, I guess, how mercenary this person is. That you pay her enough money, she's going to say whatever you want her to say.
Right.
And I really don't understand whatever popularity she did have.
I don't either. I mean, let's face it, part of being a candidate, especially for the president, you have to have some charisma. You have to have some appeal. There has to be something. Even Nixon had charisma, in a way, in a weird way. People liked him. He was like, there was something, he connected with people. She doesn't have any of that. She doesn't have any, sort of human contact. It's all this kind of, she speaks in prearranged comments that were probably fed to her by these hacks, these paid consultants who whispered in her ear.
Well, I mean, do you remember one of those debates when Ramaswamy was reciting this litany of all the corrupt things she's done, and she just stands there with no expression?
That's right.
And well, okay, it's all obviously true. So,
and Ramaswamy was responsible for getting rid of Ronna Romney, which is a great step. She was horrible. I mean, spending like, what did she spent like something like $10 million in flowers?
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, meanwhile, the party's going broke because everyone's withholding money from them, and to starve her out, which they've now done. I actually think that a good person to replace her would be Don Trump Jr. He's great. You know something? He is very good. I listen to his podcast. He's very smart, and he has a good political mind. I know that the left with their heads will blow up. I mean, it would be like, oh my God, but he would be fine. He's a very good strategist. He's very bright.
That's an interesting idea, because for quite a while, the head of the RNC had to be a big loser for some reason. Remember that Ronna replaced Michael Steele.
Oh well, he was a traitor. I mean, and also now he basically he works with CNN and MSNBC. I mean, he completely went to the dark side.
Yeah, well, he just took whatever job he could get, and he was the ultimate diversity hire.
He was.
In that sense. There was nothing conservative about him, although I believe he was lieutenant governor of Maryland, I think.
Was he?
So maybe things are starting to come around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a step in the right direction. I mean, in terms of cleaning house at the RNC, they were. I mean, she lost. She helped lose the midterm in Virginia legislature, and because she wouldn't send them any money. I mean, you have to send money. And when she was asked about it afterwards, when the accusation was made, she goes, "Oh well, they didn't want the money." Can you imagine what kind of bullshit's that? I mean, can you ever in history point to a politician that didn't want money? I mean, what is she talking about?
Oh, can you ever
I think,
point to a person who didn't want money?
I mean, really, so absurd and such a lie that I think that's what did her in. There was such a bad performance because mainly they didn't have the money because she's spending it all on sports tickets and
Did
theater.
she think her job was just to be some sort of potentate, figurehead, and
Yeah.
spend money by doing superficial, stupid things?
I don't know
Uh,
what the heck. They were spending money gorging themselves at these banquets. I mean, they didn't really do, I mean, it was like, what the heck? They're living on some kind of a weird gravy train. They didn't
yeah,
do anything for anybody, and they were stiffing Trump supporters completely.
yeah.
And of course, Ramaswamy did call her out quite brilliantly. And I think that exposed that. So maybe they could get the house in order. I don't know, but who knows?
Well, of
It,
course, the connection with Romney being
not to mention,
his
yeah,
niece. So,
he's
uh,
been really, I mean, a very big disappointment to me as someone who remembers him as governor of Massachusetts, but who looks back at that and wonders maybe, because I met him a few times and, he was there when I was running. But he's really, I think that he's bitter because he lost to Obama. He shouldn't have. And he looks back. I mean, I get it. I mean, why did I say this? Why didn't I do that? But, he's so, and then Trump came on and won. And he was just so, I think he's just so, so embittered by that, that it's just based on hate and envy and just, he's just consumed with hatred. It's too bad. I think
you'd
that was also true of McCain.
you'd think you'd get over that, but evidently not.
No, I
I mean,
mean, it's,
look at Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is
oh
the
my
other
God.
subject we should talk about. The Tucker Carlson interview of Putin
Yes, indeed.
dropped this evening, uh, and that's just being attacked
Oh,
like
they're
crazy.
absolutely, he's a traitor.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a journalist who, look at, I mean, that's what journalists are supposed to do. I would hope that the journalist community doesn't go for that because, this is this is the job. I mean, look,
I'm
Barbara
afraid that
Walters,
they
as bad
are
as she
going
was,
for it.
she went and interviewed Ayatollah Khomeini. I mean, that you want to know what these people are saying. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
the most disingenuous one, and I don't remember her name. It doesn't matter. One of the many, inane women on CNN goes in this big diatribe about how Carlson shouldn't be doing this interview, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, what Paul Joseph Watson does is cuts to an unbelievably kissy assy interview that the same woman did to Zelensky several months
Yeah.
ago.
Exactly. Of course, I
Uh,
mean, Tucker Carlson can't go and interview Zelensky because if he did, he'd probably be put in jail because Zelensky has put him on a list of what is it, like an enemies list. And
well,
I'm
then
just to
Zelensky
say,
put some archbishop uh, of the
oh yeah,
Orthodox
no, he's
Church.
he's going after Christians. He's going after anyone that dissents from his authoritarian rule. I mean, it's not good there.
No,
It's bad news, and the fact is, you need to expose this. And he's Tucker Carlson is cutting edge. He's going out there. He's doing the true work of a journalist. That's what you
yeah,
should
God
do.
forbid,
Look,
right?
if I was around and I was a journalist, if and I was around in the 1930s, I would have tried to get an interview with Hitler. Of course, you want
Yeah.
to sit down with him and find out what makes him tick. See
Well, what
what
is the
he's.
motivation that, okay, a lot of stuff is going to come out that we, the keepers of the flame, don't want to come out? I mean, can they be any more obvious than that?
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, they don't want certain, the fact that they pushed um, Zelensky into this war,
Yeah.
basically, and that Zelensky and Putin actually had a peace agreement, which they had negotiated at Minsk in Belarus, and that it was torpedoed by, what's her face,
Victoria knew.
yeah, Victoria Nuland, and these other warmongers who want to have a war, who want to continue the policy of perpetual war for perpetual peace, as said by the late historian Charles Austin Beard in his book, and he was attacked. Eventually, they tried to claim that he was an anti-Semite,
Oh,
which is
wow.
which I
That's always a
find,
good one. Yeah.
yeah, and to me, as a Jew, I find that to be particularly disgusting that they would do that, and they would use that as a way to stop somebody who's in the opposition. It's obnoxious. Anyways, um, but
So, in looking forward to this Sunday
yeah,
and the Super Bowl, what do you think of the Taylor Swift factor? Is the Super Bowl going to be fixed? What's your
I think
impression?
there's some isn't there some comments about that? I mean, I think that Peyton Manning's son made a comment about that the game was scripted. He says he made off the record comment. He was picked up by a mic, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it. I think that the all of the publicity on her doing endorsing the Democrats, I think that that probably is a good idea. It kind of diffuses it a little bit, I think. Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess that they say that she's going to draw out certain women, and there are some women who have said that they'll do whatever Taylor Swift says they should do, and that if Trump wins, they're going to leave the country, or they're going to commit suicide, or they're going to do
I hope so. Yeah.
or whatever. And I mean, it's a sad commentary that I mean, the founding fathers didn't expect people to vote like this, right? I mean, we expected people to vote based upon, that there was some level of assumed intelligence for people in terms of who they decide to
Well,
vote for.
but you have to remember that in that era, you had to be a property owner to vote.
Right.
So once they
But
opened up
what does it say
universal,
about women? What does it say about women? Is this what it is that because some rock star tells them how to vote? I mean, it's actually embarrassing. I mean, I would think that feminists would be embarrassed by this.
no, but I'll tell you this: if you find an intelligent woman on this and talk on this kind of subject, they will badmouth women like you don't believe
Oh yeah,
because
no,
they know that this exists. And I mean, this whole thing with Kelsey and Taylor Swift, for me, does not pass the smell test.
no, I know what
Right?
you mean. It's like very staged. I mean, and that's not
I'm really saying, here's a guy.
it's not the first time that this is the way Hollywood used to.
Yeah,
They would set up, you're going to go out with this one, you're going to marry this one
yeah.
because it's going to give us we're going to get a good headline, and they would pair people together. It was like arranged so that they could get extra, headlines because they got a movie coming out. I mean, I don't think that's anything that's
Well,
other than standard operation.
what makes it difficult to sell in this case is here's a big strapping tight end, and he would typically go out with what you might call swimsuit model type women, right?
Right.
So now suddenly he's dating this stick figure broad. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the deal is with him, but I know that he's doing Pfizer commercials
Yeah,
where he's sitting around, with the guys having beer and talking about the wonders of getting the jab.
yeah,
I find that a little strange. He must,
total
does he need the
sellout.
money? I mean, how much he probably makes, a $500,000 a game. I don't know how much those guys make a lot of money.
I
I mean, what
think
is it?
that
What's in it for him?
I think the way you get these athletes to do this kind of stuff is you keep emphasizing that you know what, you've got a short career, you're not very smart, you're not going to be able to do anything else. So you got to make it where you can. You could get hurt tomorrow and it would all
Right.
end. So collect all the money now. And if Pfizer is willing to give you $1 or $2 million to do this commercial, then what happens to personal integrity out the window? I
No,
promise.
I get the fact that they value endorsements, but it's one thing for Wheaties, but I mean to have like a jab, I mean it's like,
I promise you, he did not get the shot.
yeah,
And
I agree with you.
and more than that, which makes this whole thing so insidious, is are you aware? You probably are that it's been estimated by a number of people that purposely Pfizer ran about 40% placebos in the vaccines that were put out.
Well,
And people were,
I hope I got one of those. I mean, who was getting the placebos?
all right, here was the deal. It was random. It was,
Uh,
well, okay. If you were a noteworthy figure,
that way they would keep the deaths and the maiming down, right?
well, right, but in the short term, if you had that much placebo, then even because remember the initial thing with this was where I got off on it from day one was you give someone an antiviral injection, there are these massive reactions to the shot. Okay, I've been around for a long time. The only one I ever heard of that came even close to that was the original pneumonia shot for the pneumococcal bacteria. You got, and then it was a fairly painful arm for 3 to 5 days. But this idea that people are calling in sick, oh no, I just feel like hell. I got a fever of 165. I did, So you think, well, something's wrong. So now it makes sense. Long term, yeah, you're minimizing the horrible side effects, but short term, you're minimizing the, Johnny got the shot and he's had a bad reaction to it initially.
Right.
So, but think more deeply on this too. If you're willing to go 40% placebo on launching a vaccine, you obviously know that it doesn't work. And you suspect that it might be harmful.
Do you
But if
think
you're
that when
willing
you say
to
they had 40% placebo, do you think that the people, the actual, like at the level of like doctors and nurses, they knew which one was the placebo?
now,
Okay.
now, I think it was done
So
at the
it's almost like playing
manufacturing level.
Russian roulette.
Yeah. Now, well, okay, if you were Joe Biden or Tony
then they
Fauci,
do. Yeah, then they do know.
they're shot on
Yeah.
television, yeah. But so that is so cynical. I suspect they thought there might be bad side effects, but they knew from the jump that it didn't work.
Well,
So,
Mike, I hope that there's evidence that comes out for that because that really is pretty bad if that's what they did, and I don't doubt it. But
well, I mean, how are you going to get evidence? The only thing they have on it now is people that worked at these factories are whistleblowing, so to speak,
yeah.
on Twitter and in informal ways. But no, you're not going to have a GMP and the FDA
No, I
record
understand.
saying that this batch was placebo.
I should have Ed Dowd back on the show who talks about this. He's the one that he blew the story of how the insurance actuarials are talking about the uptick in deaths and in
Yeah.
serious cases of life insurance collection and people who have been maimed. And he's on this subject. I bet he knows something about it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So, but the other thing related to this, which was on Jordan Schachtel's website or Substack,
Yeah.
68 colleges and universities, which include every major one that you can think of, still require the COVID vax for registration. Maybe you didn't know that.
No, I mean, I know that here they were certainly, you had to show a card in order to get in the place. Unfortunately, I have one of those. I regret having had that damn shot, and I certainly regret that my family had it. It worried
And the
me.
good news is that if you haven't gotten any bad reaction after this time, you're probably okay. And the other thing that makes you feel good is all those placebos out there.
Well, now I actually feel hopeful now that you've said that
Yeah.
maybe
Oh,
we
yeah.
all got, maybe we didn't get the real deal. I mean, I know that I got Pfizer, so I don't know about Moderna too with placebos or just Pfizer.
Well, most of the discussion has been about Pfizer, but I don't know that anybody else would have worked differently.
And I had no reaction at all, so I don't know. Maybe it is
If you had no reaction at all when you got the shot,
nothing.
you likely had a placebo.
Thank God. I mean, I wish everyone did. I mean, it's sad and it's tragic.
But when you say no reaction, you mean like you literally
Nothing.
mean nothing.
I literally mean not even like any soreness, nothing.
All right. Well, even on a garden variety flu shot, most
Well,
people get
and
a
I did have a bad reaction to a flu shot. I no longer get those. I mean, I almost was going to check into a hospital after getting
really.
that. So, I mean, in terms of like asthmatic or I have a tendency toward asthma, but there was somewhat of a bronchial issue. And I remember I called the doctor and they said, well, see if you can tough it out, but if it gets any worse, you might have to check in. And I
Wow.
did, and I got better. But the point is that I don't know, maybe that's why they gave me a placebo because they know that. I don't know.
I don't think they at that level could identify it, but
Right.
most people that I know that got the shot said, well, I mean, it was very interesting. Okay. In the case of my son and daughter, they were worried that they were in Europe or something and can they get back in the country? And there was all that stuff going
Yeah.
on. I think the way it worked was my son had a slight reaction, my daughter in law didn't,
Hmm.
which makes you really think this placebo thing has got some legs.
I think you're right. It makes sense.
Um,
Anyway, Mike, so what do you have coming up on your
okay, well,
Substack?
I had that piece on the power of language that went up a few days ago,
Yeah.
and some people like that. I think it may have been a little too, I don't want to say esoteric, but boring in a sense. But the trouble is that I don't want to fall into this where I'm writing the same article using different words every week. But it's all related. I mean, if you're destroying language, then it also implies that everything else you hear is a lie, and it's all related. So
Hmm.
uh, let's hope that Tucker Carlson's thing goes off as planned, 6
Yes,
p.m. Eastern.
should be
Uh,
interesting.
and it's
And
going to be a lot
I think
of fun.
his whole channel is on Twitter. I mean, that's where,
Yeah.
and it's huge. And for my thing, tomorrow I've got Matt Ehret coming on. He's a Canadian journalist. He's an intellectual. He's very much looking at the deep state. He's very, very good. I've been watching his videos. And I'm negotiating with E. Michael Jones. He's insisting that he won't come on unless I refer to give him the topic, and he insists that the topic must be how the Israelis are committing genocide. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'll be happy to discuss that and refute it with you, but I'm not going to. If you want, I'll call it. Are the Israelis committing genocide, or are they defending themselves against potential genocide? So we'll see what happens. He's
Boy,
become.
I don't know why he would even go there. I mean, he just
Well,
digging
he
himself.
believe he's gone way off the deep end on Israel. I mean, and I think that in a way, the fact that people like Jones and like Kevin Barrett, who I was thinking of having the two of them on together,
Hmm.
are talking about genocide. To me, that actually shows that Israel's winning, right? Because otherwise they would be saying a whole different tune. Anyways, Mike, so as always, thanks for joining me.
Well, it was a pleasure, and we will do this again next week.
Yes, you bet. Thanks a lot.